Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business Basics for Engineers, creating value within the production. And now we look at a certain part of creating value, which is procurement. We've looked at production itself. We tried to understand production functions, the cost functions, and then what you can do with certain combinations. Now the question is, where do you get the combinations of the goods we'd like to put in, or you have to put into your production process? And this is what we are going to talk about here. Is this kind of procurement like shopping? Well, basically, first of all, you ask yourself some of the same question. The question is, what do you need? When do you buy that? So how much do you need from that? Where do you buy that? And where do you store your goods you shopped so far? And you can also optimize this kind of, or the procurement in general, this kind of system, so to say. So the first optimization, and now we're getting back to heuristics and dealing with complexity of systems, is the 80-20. And we sometimes say 80-20 because we say we care about 80% of what we do it really right, and the remaining 20% is just what gets to the no-brainer. If you look at what we drink every day, we do drink a lot of water. We do not really care where the water is coming from, but and this will probably be at least 80% of what we drink, but the remaining 20%, be it the wine, be it the beer, we select carefully. And this basically is the same what you do also in the business setting when you take care about procurement. Because in procurement, I mean, if you have a simple product like vodka and you only need potatoes, yeast, and water, you might think about all those ingredients really thoroughly. But if you don't, if you have a complex system with many products you buy, you can't do that. And even in that system, does it really make sense to take care about the water? Is the water making a difference in vodka? I don't know, but it says it makes a difference in whiskey, but in vodka, I don't know. But this is why you just buy the water, and this also probably counts for a lot of your procurement, but it's probably more important to have good look on the potatoes and even a better look on the yeast. And this is what we call the 80-20 or the ABC analysis. ABC analysis is that we analyze our products, not only the products we sell, also the products we buy or the resources. And we have A items with very tight control. We really look deeply into the yeast, if the yeast is okay. We have B items with less tight control and good records. And we have C items with very simple methods to buy them and minimum records. So what we do is we try to really understand our procurement for yeast. We try to understand our procurement for potatoes, and we take the water that's there. That's it. And based on that, we can make decisions like a make or buy decision, for example. We get to that in a minute. We can also decide on the procurement on an basis of an XYZ analysis. It's to some extent pretty equivalent, saying, okay, what do I consume? Do I consume constantly? Do I have wilder fluctuations, or is it completely unsteady? And what's my resulting ability schedule? Is it high, middle, or low? And by analyzing products in a different way, putting them in the XYZ box, we can make recommendations for provisions of material. And that's the second analysis we do. And it might be a different analysis here. So these are two different analyses, and the one analysis is basically then the decision on where do we buy, how do we make a buy decision on the ingredients. And the second decision is on the question XYZ. It's also 3 parts or 3 boxes is on the question of a storage, basically. So let's start with the first question. We took the example of potatoes. How do you best buy potatoes? And potatoes, let's assume they are one of the products you pay more attention to. And you have different ways of buying potatoes. You can buy all the potatoes from this guy, or you can buy potatoes, some from this guy and some more potatoes from the other guys. And you can take your truck and bring it to your place where you have your production plant. How do you best buy that? Well, the one on the left side is called single sourcing. The other one on the right side is called multiple sourcing. What's the difference between those two, and what are the advantages and disadvantages? Well, the difference is you source with one supplier or you source with multiple suppliers. That's not a big difference. But what are this is the big difference. But the question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages? The advantages of only sourcing from one person is you can have a higher economy of scale. Not really scale, but you can get a quantity discount. This is how we should put it. Because if you buy more from this guy, you can say, okay, I want to have it cheaper. You have also some fixed cost regression. You only have to go to one place with your truck. And you can more easily coordinate and control that, maybe based on trust, because you do only have to coordinate, control one supplier. However, the disadvantage, you have a big dependency on that. And if this guy tells you, I'm not going to sell potatoes to you anymore, you're out of the business for at least a couple of weeks until you have other suppliers. So you are running a risk when delivery problems occur, and the flexibility is limited because you're bound to this one guy, the single guy. This is why in these cases, in some other cases, companies go on multiple sourcing, depending on the good and so on. So there are questions you should ask yourself, when to do the one, when to do the other one. We can go into that in a minute. What's the multiple sourcing and what is the advantage? It reduces dependencies. You see it's basically reflected on the other side. Maybe you can also get it cheaper because you can build competition between your suppliers, and you're basically safer because even when one supplier doesn't supply to you anymore, the others might do that. However, you can't realize the big quantity discounts, so you might still have cost disadvantages and you have higher transaction costs in total. So that's a disadvantage between the two sides. And this is what you have to weigh. In the vodka example, and every company is doing the same thing. Do you do it for every product? No, you don't. You just do it for, and this is why we talked about the ABC analysis. You do it for the A products, maybe do it for the B products, you don't do it for the C products, because your company is so complex. Please don't think you can take care for everything. So you have to rely on something. Even Starbucks, remember that example? They probably take care for the coffee beans extensively, also for the milk, maybe for the tea. But what about the water they get? They just take it out of the local water supply. That's it. So even those companies who are really good in the value chain do that. So how does a make or buy decision help you to focus on core competencies? What you do is you evaluate two things if you make a make or buy decision. You evaluate on the strategic relevance of the goods and on the operative relevance of the goods. So you ask yourself the question when you think about make or buy, is it strategically relevant and it's operatively relevant? And you try to understand whether it makes sense. And in the example of the vodka, what you could do is you could, also grow your own potatoes. Ask this question: does it make sense for myself not to source, but to grow my own potatoes. And then think about the question, is it relevant for you? Well, yes, it's relevant, but is it a core competence in your company? I guess in most cases it's not. Even for Starbucks, they don't grow their own coffee beans. Others can do that a lot better. That's not their core competence. So maybe others should do that. Is the security of the supply ensured or unsure? Well, for the Starbucks example, good example, but even they probably source from different sources, so the security of the supply is sure for them. Coffee beans are still important, but it's probably, since the core competencies are not there, not making sense. What about internal know-how and long-term implications of your own learning curve? Same argumentation. That's the question of the strategic relevance. And operative, it's a question of the level of direct production cost when the product is internally produced. And secondly, it's a question of your fixed and variable costs. So if you, for example, need something only once and you have to build up a part of your company or a division in your company for that, it's probably not making sense. If you need it forever, it might make sense. So the question Starbucks could ask, because they need coffee beans always, why don't they build up their operations for coffee beans? And although it's at the very first moment, they have to pay for a lot of fixed costs. Over time, they can decrease those fixed costs due to the economies of scale. And the last question is the level of transaction costs for switching from make or buy, or transaction costs in general. And the question, how high are these transaction costs depending on the quantity you have to buy, and the moments how often you do this kind of procurement. So procurement in total, what you can see is, if you look at those examples, procurement is a relevant lever in the organization. Since you can spend a lot of time with procurement, but probably it especially makes sense to spend some time with the A and B products. And then you can go deeper into analyzing where to get them, and maybe if you want to do it by yourself or if you let others do that. Within the German industrial companies, 60% of revenues are material costs. So it's quite important. It's of great importance, at least for German companies. This is why you can see it makes sense also to have a little look onto procurement.